The Open Cup final is tonight. Did MLS kill the competition? Did somebody actually want to pay money for Everton? That might be true, and he's American, and star players are going down left and right across Europe. And really, how plastic is American soccer? This and more on Wednesday's Morning Kickaround. Morning. Welcome to the show. Wednesday, September 25th, Morning Kickaround. My name is Robert Kerr, up from the lower leagues. In the afternoons, he talks to American soccer legend Eric Winalda, but he talks to me on Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings. It is Jason Davis.
Morning, Robert. Can't keep my glasses on, apparently, but I'm ready to talk about soccer. I got a lot of things on my mind today. We're going to dive in deep. Let's go. Let's do it.
There's a lot of soccer rings. I didn't talk about it on Monday, but I spent the weekend at a very crunchy folksy music festival over the weekend. A lot of talk of airing gratitude. And I'm very gratitude for my 2 weekly pickup soccer nights. Very blessed to have wonderful groups that I'm able to play with and not commit to a team and all that. But I wanted to ask you, what is a worse player to be up at pickup game? The fouler or the complainer?
I don't know that I can. I don't know that I can pick between those. Those are pretty bad. I mean, obviously in a pickup game where there is that, honor system. The fouler is kind of that's not somebody you want to be playing against. But nobody wants to hear anybody complain all the time either. I guess I think I'll take the complainer. I don't like a whiner. I'm not a big fan of that, Robert.
Yeah, we're all here for fun. Why are you complaining? And then no one, we all have jobs in the morning. Why is people going 2-footed tackling at a pickup game? But that aside, thanks for joining us this morning. It is a happy hump day. Get a hold of the show on XM Kickaround on X and Instagram. You want to show that, Jason? Thank you very much. And if you're more of an email guy, hit us up for questions, comments, concerns, or partnership opportunities at the Morning Kickaround at gmail.com. All right, Jason, let's get into it. The headlines of the day. Cue the long balls. All right, it is a big day for American soccer lovers. The U.S. Open Cup final is tonight, 10:30. 10:30 Eastern on Apple TV. Los Angeles Football Club versus Sporting Kansas City. What do you think, Jason? Where are you on this game?
Well, I mean, this is obviously a team that has established themselves as one of the front-running clubs of American soccer, one of the best run teams. Obviously, playing in Los Angeles is an advantage. It gets you the ability to attract big-name players at the end of their career who might give you a discount to go play in sunny California. Olivier Giroud this time. Of course, it's been Gareth Bale in the past. LAFC's never won this competition. Obviously, haven't been around that long. Never been in a final. And look, I got the path to the final for them this season. Again, we're going to talk later in the show about the Open Cup and the changes to the format and what MLS has done to it. But this is LAFC. They were one of the 8 MLS teams to enter their first team in the competition. Round of 32 win over the Las Vegas Lights in Vegas. They beat Loudoun United 3-0 in the round of 16. New Mexico United in the round of the quarterfinal round. And then, as you saw there, Seattle, they beat them 1-0 up there in Seattle. So only one MLS team on that run for LAFC. But they did beat Seattle. Who cares very much about this competition? They did that in that bandbox up there in Tukwila, Washington, Starfire Sports Complex. They didn't have to do it in Seattle's big building, which I don't know if you ding them for that. But, this is obviously something that LAFC has put some effort into. They rotated on the weekend. Didi Bouanga didn't start that loss against FC Dallas, which caught a lot of people off guard. But then you looked at the lineup and went, oh, okay, well, Steve Trundlow's clearly prioritizing the Open Cup final this week. So I think that there's something there for LAFC. And then Sporting Kansas City. Here it is. You see it. They've won this thing 4 times, and they've never lost a final. Union Omaha, FC Tulsa, FC Dallas, and Indy 11, their run to the final. That Indy 11 victory, that was our last hope for a lower division team to buck the trend and win this thing for the first time since the Rochester Rhinos did it in '99. Robert, do I have that? Do I have that right?
I believe you're right, sir. And I got to say, I'm impressed with your pronunciation of the location of Starfire Stadium.
Oh, okay. Well, I've been there. I actually took in a game, a U.S. Open Cup match 5 or 6 years ago in that building in Tukwila, Washington. So it's not like I have no personal experience with the place. Look, the Open Cup is a big deal for a lot of people. People love this competition. I don't know that this is the sexiest matchup we could have gotten. I don't think that LA is a bad place for this game, and I think it's okay that LAFC is in it. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Sporting Kansas City. And if you're going to actually be fair about it, despite the season that Sporting is having in Major League Soccer, for them to make a run to a final, that's a good thing. That's something that if an English team makes a deep run in the FA Cup despite not having a good league season, we say, oh, well, that's great. They've got that to focus on. They got something good in their season. Be a West Brom, win an FA Cup while also being relegated in the same season. I mean, obviously relegation
That
can't
was
happen
Wigan.
here.
Wigan Athletic.
Sorry, you're right. It was Wigan. It was not West Brom. I got my W's confused. That's why you're here, Robert, to check me on this stuff.
And that was a weird year where there was another week of the league season after the FA Cup. Traditionally, FA Cup is the final domestic a competition match in England, but that year was strange. So they had that high of winning, but I've heard players complain they didn't even really get to celebrate because the very next week they were relegated.
Yeah. You want a connection between that Wigan team and Sporting Kansas City, who's in this final and has won the competition 4 times? Roger Espinoza was playing for Wigan when they won that FA Cup title and then got relegated. Obviously came back and played in Sporting for Sporting again before retiring. I think last year was maybe Roger's last season in Major League Soccer. If I'm somebody who will know Sporting very well will remember what happened with Roger Espinoza. But
and do you think that Espinoza is going to be referencing that Wigan victory on the in his pre-match chat tonight?
I have no idea. I have no idea how that maybe.
You remember when I was on Wigan, boys?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think he's in that locker room anymore. But the thing about Sporting is they still have some hope of qualifying for the postseason of Major League Soccer, despite the campaign they've had so far, because there are lots of playoff spots available in MLS, 9 of them in each conference. It's an uphill climb, and there's only a few games left in the season. I guess the question is always, if you win something like an Open Cup and you miss the playoffs in Major League Soccer, is that a successful season? Because we judge teams on silverware, and there are only so many trophies to go around. And if you have any of them, does that count as a successful season? Remember, Robert, that DC United finished dead last, and I think had the worst season of any MLS team in history. Probably still hold that record when Ben Olsen was in charge and they won an Open Cup against RSL in what year was that? You're gonna have to look that up for me. I didn't pull that information, but that was that a successful season for DC United, being dead last but winning a U.S. Open Cup? I don't know. I don't know how you judge that. That's an interesting conundrum for a fan.
That may have been the 2013, but we will dig deeper into the U.S. Open Cup later on in the show and maybe bring up some favorite matchups of recent memory. But we'll switch over to long ball number 2. Everton. Somebody wants to buy them, and they are American, leading to a little bit of hope in a very bleak outlook for the second team in Liverpool.
It's been bad, right? Obviously avoiding relegation is kind of like, whew, but you don't feel good about it. I mean, you don't feel thrilled about the future of Everton Football Club if you're a fan, because you might be in a relegation scrap again this year. There obviously this ownership thing was hanging over them. I do think that this is a much better outcome for Everton than 777 partners or whatever that was buying with their shadiness and their nonsense, buying the club if that had managed to go through. I mean, that's why you have these checks. It's why you have a fit and proper persons test. It's why you make sure the checks are going to clear before you say, yes, you now own Everton. So a bullet dodged on that front. It is another American owner in the Premier League, which is interesting. And I know we've talked about this on Monday. We covered the idea of how American owners might change the complexion of the English Premier League. This is supposed to be about 400 million pounds, which, if I'm doing my basic math, puts it at 550 million dollars roughly. Somebody check me on this exchange rate, which feels like a pretty good deal. I don't know exactly what the valuation of Everton would be. Clearly, if you get relegated, the club loses value, a pretty significant amount of value. But I would bet on Everton coming right back up. They have a new stadium in the works. That's going to change their complexion financially. I mean, you have to pay it off and all those things. And I don't know where those numbers are on the balance sheet, Robert. But I think you've got to be thrilled if you're Everton. And the only issue I have, one of my issues. I have several issues, personal and otherwise. One of the issues I have with this is that we are talking again about a multi-club owner. Right? We're talking about, there are some that are these corporate identities, City Football Group, the Red Bull Group, name it. There's some of those. This is the Friedkin Group, who also own Roma, buying Everton. And are we again going to have one of those, obviously Everton fans would love for this to happen because it would mean being back in Europe. But what if we get to that point where, again, UEFA has to decide, can both Everton and Roma be in a European competition if they are essentially owned by the same people?
Yeah, and who's going to be the first team in the strata of the ownership group? Does Everton take the top teams or the top players in the ownership group? Who is the priority?
Do we even know that that's going to be a thing, right? And I don't know that we should be naive about it. It's certainly possible that they could treat this like City does with their clubs, right? Like you have a Savinho. He's a City player. He goes on loan to Girona. He helps Girona have an incredible year last year. And then City's like, nah, he's too good for Girona. We're bringing him back. I would hope that there's one entity, Everton, with their decision makers, and then there's one entity, Roma, with theirs. Of course, with the crossover in ownership, if Dan Friedkin decides that he wants to make decisions, who's going to say no to the boss who's got the billions in the bank and wrote the big check? Those are tough questions, and I hate that that's where we are in modern football.
I remember the Ponzo group that owns Watford in England had multiple other teams, and they treated Watford as their, top tier. And then players that showed up or were maybe sliding down the scale would go to back to Empoli, I believe, was their Italian affiliate. And so there has been examples, but it does put everything kind of in an awkward position, kind of out of the traditional norm of, European club football. And then if you're a fan of the team that's maybe lower in the pecking order, you can't really ever imagine your players being the peak of what that project is. And they're not 100% the goal to, does Roma become secondary? Do they get all the best players?
Yeah.
That puts fans into a funny place. It's like having a AAA baseball team in your backyard. If those players start doing well, see you later.
Well, but look, these are in the Friedkin case, and in some of these other cases, we're talking about clubs with deep roots, long histories, fan bases that go back generations and generations. As a tease for what's coming later in the show, when we get to Culture Wars, we're going to be talking about a relationship that's slightly different because the timelines are so different. And that is another part of this too, is that as Americans, as we look at how our soccer culture grows, and these multi-club ownership groups start buying things up, investing in American soccer, there's these crossovers, these tie-ins, are we just minor league outfits that are serving major clubs abroad? And if you don't want that, if you're a Roma fan, if Everton becomes the top of the Friedkin ladder, and obviously, if you're an Everton fan, you don't want it to be Roma the other way around. I can't imagine it would be, but that's sort of this idea of like the Premier League predominance. So it is a yucky situation as a whole of how things are going in terms of club ownership. But certainly the bottom line today for Everton fans is, oh, thank God somebody wants to buy us, and they're going to bring stability, and that's good. That's news.
That is news for Everton. And the one point before we move on to the next long ball is a lot of the teams that or clubs that have built new stadiums have seen a dip on the field. Tottenham, Arsenal, and the like had a little dip and are trying to come through that with their new building. Everton can't afford to have any dips because they've been riding the line for relegation. And I can't imagine opening a
Yeah.
brand new building in the second tier would do anything positive for their business plans. Switching it up, long ball number 3 of the day as star players fall left and right across Europe's leagues. There are more games happening today and this week in the third, fourth priority competition in England with Carabao Cup
Sure.
happening midweek this week.
Sure. I think it goes Champions League if you're in it. Obviously, European competition, regardless. Champions League, Europa League, Conference League, I guess. And then the Premier League. I mean, clearly, if you're a Champions League club, you have eyes in the Premier League as well. And then the FA Cup. And then like the FA Youth Cup. And then like the U16 Cup. And then the League Cup. Is right? That's how that. No? Am I overstating the
League's Cup is definitely, if you're a Premier League team, the Carabao Cup or the League Cup is the lowest priority. But it's one of those things like any cup competition, you only care about it if you are in it at the end.
Right? Yes, right.
If your team's in it, you're really excited to win it.
I guess that's true. I mean, again, this is that balance. Like, if you're a club that has no possibility of winning a league title, then hey, winning a league. I mean, I thought this about Fulham last season. Fulham a semifinalist in last year's Carabao Cup, losing to Liverpool, who eventually went on to win the competition. If Fulham had managed to pull that off and win that trophy, man, I'd be thrilled as a Fulham fan, because what else are we going to win? What other trophy is Fulham putting in their trophy case? I mean, the days of reaching a Europa League final seem to be in the distant past. And I guess it's possible that Fulham could get to that level again. But for the time being, what do we got? Well, we got the FA Cup and we've got the League Cup. And those are much more likely than winning a Premier League title by factors of a billion. I mean, that just is not going to happen for Fulham right now. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm glad that this exists for those kind of clubs. But then you look at the results, and we're round 3. Chelsea just rocks Barrow 5-0 with the hat trick from Nkunku. City beats Watford. And by the way, 48 hours after they played Arsenal in a critical Premier League match at the Etihad. Walsall loses to Leicester on penalties. Okay. Wycombe Wanderers put up a fight, lose at home to Aston Villa with former Chicago fireman John Duran scoring again off the bench for Villa. And then today, Liverpool-West Ham, that's 2 Premier League clubs. Either one of them wins. I would expect Liverpool to win, but either one of them wins, it's kind of like whatever. We have other fish to fry. West Ham is a club that's a little bit more, would probably be a little bit more appreciative of a League Cup title than a Liverpool would, depending on the priorities. And then obviously Arsenal up against Bolton. You wouldn't expect Bolton in League One to have much of a chance of doing anything. So, yeah.
It's all about context. Liverpool was in the running for 4 titles a season or 2 ago, ended up with the FA Cup and Carabao Cup.
No, they did not win the FA Cup.
No, 2 years, 2 years ago.
Oh, 2 years ago.
My point is that for a team like Liverpool, who were hoping for, they went to Champions League final and, we're in the runnings for a Premier League title. They win 2 cup competitions and the season is considered disappointment. Any other team down the list and, 2 cup wins and titles is, a fantastic season. And West Ham versus Liverpool, that's the kind of team where Liverpool's second squad is probably going to be a lot more dynamic and talented than a West Ham second string, because West Ham is probably prioritizing their Premier League games. So,
well, I mean, it's of the moment, right? Cody Gakpo's in incredible form, so he's getting all this opportunities for Liverpool, and Obviously Luis Diaz is nearly a world class attacking player. I mean, some people would put him in that category. Darwin Nunez has been in good form. I mean, to have those weapons, Mo Salah probably isn't going to play, but that doesn't mean you're having a massive drop off. That like you said, this is an opportunity. It was the same with Chelsea yesterday. Chelsea gets an opportunity to run out a bunch of guys who weren't getting a ton of minutes. João Felix gets a start when he would normally be relief for Cole Palmer in a match that meant more to Chelsea. So Maresca gets a chance to play guys who aren't getting looks because they have 30 players at Chelsea right now who are sort of wasting away. So that's what this competition is. And it does, like you said, until we get down to the end and these clubs are eyeing the silverware and literally imagining their names being engraved on it, they're not going to play the best team possible. They just can't because of fixture congestion.
Just a final note on EFL Cup. The defining characteristic that kind of separates this from the FA Cup is this is just the top 4 leagues participating. So Premier League through League 2, no non-league teams in this one. Right. So just a little bit of a note for the audience members who did not know that, but I think that about does it. That's probably about enough Carabao Cup talk for one day. Let's move right along. Hang tight. Here comes today's hot topic. Today's hot topic here on the Morning Kickaround. I'm Robert Kerr. He's Jason Davis. The U.S. Open Cup final, LAFC versus Sporting KC. But today's topic is, did MLS kill the Open Cup? Only 8 or 9 teams from MLS entered the competition, and a big draw of the competition in general for soccer fans is the competition between leagues. Jason, has MLS killed this competition?
Killed it is heavy. I know that we're choosing that word because it's more evocative than saying, did MLS maim the Open Cup? But if we're talking about on a scale of injury, I don't think MLS killed the Open Cup, but I do think MLS did some serious damage to the interest levels for a lot of people, and they certainly pissed off a lot of fans of lower division soccer in the United States. I mean, the uproar. You and I live in the soccer bubble. Everybody watching this show probably lives in an American soccer bubble, and things feel bigger than they are outside of that bubble. And I think that the uproar over how MLS handled themselves this year was big for American soccer fans, but it barely made a ripple anywhere else. And that's a little sad, right? That's certainly something I lament. Like, I wish the Open Cup was a bigger deal, the kind of thing that would make the debate shows on the major sports networks, but that's really not where we're at. I do think it's made a couple of television shows where there are some or some radio shows where some American soccer fans involved, but it's not the thing that has, like, in a country, in a different country with a stronger soccer culture and a deeper connection to something like the Open Cup or their national competition, their Open Cup competition. This would have been bloody murder, would have been cried out over the way MLS handled themselves. And I did put this together, so let's take a little review here. MLS this year, they basically threatened to pull out of the competition. They didn't like the way it was going. That's Don Garber's words, not mine. 8 of 26 American clubs entered their first teams, bunch of second teams. No MLS teams in the CONCACAF Champions Cup played their first team in the Open Cup. And 9 MLS teams entered MLS Next Pro teams. That was the alternative. With DC United, that's what a joke. DC United wasn't even able to participate because they don't have an MLS Next Pro team right now. They had Loudoun United. They sold Loudoun United. They're going to start a team in Baltimore apparently, but they haven't gotten that off the ground. So how can you say this is a fully built out, the fully realized American soccer Open Cup tournament if you have a team that doesn't even play in it? Or isn't represented in any way, shape, or form? And again, that's even before we get to how ridiculous is it that MLS was like, no, we're going to send our kids. We're going to send a bunch of guys who don't even have pro contracts to play in this thing to represent us. This was a tantrum that MLS threw. And again, I think it's damaged the tournament. It certainly makes me less interested this season.
Yeah, interest has to be down, and definitely took the wind out of a lot of sails of folks that are supporters of teams not in MLS. Just imagine overseas if like only the bottom 8 teams in the Premier League participated in the FA Cup. Like that would absolutely just destroy that competition. Definitely, at least as far as perception, at the very least. And if you talk to American soccer fans, many of their favorite memories are when MLS teams take on teams
Mhm.
from other leagues, especially when an MLS team goes to a venue of another team. It just kind of sparks some life into that quote unquote market, or for that fan base, gets people excited in a completely different way than just a an in league matchup would do. And it seems even a little bit more unfair, and it could get under the skin of soccer fans more, as the justification of this was scheduling conflicts and whatnot, but they were self-inflicted scheduling conflicts by the entrance of the League's Cup, and even
Right.
teams
Yeah.
even added additional international friendlies during that period as well. So a lot of those reasons kind of fall flat.
Yeah, look, this is clearly, again, you kind of have to be cynical if you are an American soccer fan. And I do think it's okay to like MLS and like your MLS team and appreciate the growth of the league and the stadiums that it's built and all these things that have come with MLS over the past 25 or 30 years now. And also say they're jerks, right? They especially at this point in the evolution of MLS and the history of American soccer, Major League Soccer throws its weight around in a way that feels unfair and wrong. And this is one of those examples, right? MLS does not control the U.S. Open Cup. They don't sell the broadcast rights. They don't gain anything from this competition monetarily, directly, right? And you can even unspool this and think, well, would this be happening if Soccer United Marketing was still handling things for U.S. Soccer, a relationship that lasted for a long time? That relationship no longer exists. U.S. Soccer is doing their own thing. MLS is sort of therefore cut out of the Open Cup marketing and the broadcast rights and everything else. They're not getting any piece of that. And here they are saying, we don't really like this competition anymore. We think it's bad. We don't want to play in it. Do you not want to play in it because fixture congestion, as you said, or competitions? There's too many things going on. Again, after you've created a whole new competition, played over a month where you pause your. Is it that, or is it just that you aren't getting paid at all from this? And I said this at the time, Robert, and I still think this is probably true on some level, that Apple TV executives, after Major League Soccer signed their deal to move their product to Apple TV and MLS Season Pass, they saw Lionel Messi arrived. League Cup was massive last year for them. It was like the first real big thing for Apple TV Plus, with the biggest player on the planet coming and winning that competition. And then he was also in the Open Cup, and you remember they went all the way to the final against Houston. And I'm wondering if those Apple TV executives were like, "Hey Don, why is Lionel Messi playing in a competition we have nothing? Why is he playing in somebody else's competition? We're not benefiting from this." Now, obviously, Apple TV has the Open Cup now, but at the time, you wonder if there was like, "Wait a second, Don, we paid you all this money to put your product and your players on our network, on our streaming platform, and here it is playing on somebody else's platform.
On I
How
think he
is
was
that
like
possible?"
a YouTube stream from the Federation, I believe, that Leo Messi was playing on. Yeah, just a free stream.
Something like that. Something I think Paramount picked it up. I want to remember. I want to say that Paramount Plus picked it up last season, but somebody in the chat's going to remember that for us. But regardless, it feels sort of nakedly about control of the soccer product that America is putting out, and this is a competition that falls outside of MLS's purview, and they have decided to throw their weight around to push U.S. soccer around on this. And, there were lots of people saying that the nuclear option should be deployed. If MLS doesn't want to participate in the Open Cup, well, then you decertify the league, right? You pull their sanctioning, because it's right there in the bylaws of U.S. soccer that in order to be a sanctioned professional outdoor men's first division league, you have to play in the Open Cup. And did they find a way? Did they get a pass this season? And honestly, here we are on the day of the final with two teams who entered their first teams because they were not among the group that was in the Champions Cup or having to send a second team. And this is going to feel nominally like a normal U.S. Open Cup final. Two MLS first teams are playing for the trophy. But everything that led up to this moment is very different and felt very different. And it was it was a tragedy on some level that we were watching those early rounds unfold with a joke with MLS second teams, MLS Next Pro teams playing in the competition instead of MLS first teams.
Nothing gets or historically got the lower league soccer kingdom or nerddom excited than those early round games where the surviving non-MLS teams got those matchups against MLS teams. And some of my favorite memories, I am in the Detroit metro area, no MLS team within 4 or 5 hours of my location. So MLS doesn't really hit the radar at all in this area. But DCFC in the USL Championship, they have carved out an amazing niche, one of the best stories in American soccer. But the DCFC didn't truly hit the local mainstream, like the 10 o'clock news and, the local sports writers didn't really talk about it until the Columbus Crew came to town 2 years ago. And then for a couple news cycles, when they beat Columbus, just even the fact when it was announced, they were in the main news cycle. And so it does enrich and, what do you call
Absolutely.
it? Stimulate those teams and those quote unquote markets in the non-MLS cities. And it's the competition is one of the few things in American soccer where everyone is pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And again, there's this notion that MLS has benefited quite a bit from the largesse of U.S. soccer, from a lot of things in its first 15, 20 years before it got to this place of being able to be the bully on the block and say, well, we've got all the money and we've got all the stadiums and we got all the big players. There was a long time when it was a question if MLS could survive, and it was kind of the whole of American soccer. I don't mean the fandom, but the whole of the American soccer apparatus kind of had to support MLS and prop it up. And here you are in 2024, and instead of playing nice and paying it back on some level by being willing to go to places like Detroit or even lower down the ladder and bring your weight and your fame and popularity to the table to support those lower division teams by playing against them in this competition, you said, nope, we're going to take half our ball or 3/4 of our ball and go home, which is just not a good look for Major League Soccer.
It's quite the asterisk on the competition, especially the DC United, the caveat to, we're going to enter our backup team that doesn't exist.
That's a team that has won this competition multiple times.
No respect.
They're not even entered. That's a joke. They're not even entered in any form, and that's nonsense. That's absolutely nonsense.
Before we kind of move on from the Open Cup topic, what we already talked about one of mine 2 years ago when Columbus Crew came to Hamtramck, Michigan, and lost 2-1. Like I said, big news. Hit the local news cycle. What is one of your personal favorite Open Cup memories or stories?
Well, I have to think about it a little bit. I'm trying to think of a final that I really enjoyed, and it's been a little while since I can think of one that was like, wow, that final. I don't think we've done a good job. This is on the Open Cup. It's on U.S. Soccer, absolutely, and there's a lot of criticism, by the way, to throw around at U.S. Soccer for how they've promoted this competition, how they've handled broadcasting rights and everything else. But the final should be this much bigger deal, and they really don't stick out. What sticks out for me is the U.S. Open Cup match between Seattle and Portland. Again, I think this was in Tukwila, Washington, at Starfire Sports Complex. I want to say 2015, something like that. There were a bunch of cards being shown, and Clint Dempsey wasn't having it with the center referee. Ripped the notebook out of the center referee's hands, then was sent off? I mean, I can't remember the sequence of events. Was he sent off before he ripped the notebook out of the referee's hands, or was it before? Obviously, you can't do that. He did not seem very happy stomping off the field. And I think that it has taken on this mythical resonance among Seattle fans, and they call it the red card wedding, I think is what they call that, because there's a Game of Thrones reference in there, because there was the red wedding in the Game
Yeah, I
of
remember
Thrones
seeing that, and I was
story.
like, he must have. Had to have been a long suspension. I've never seen anything like that or since.
There was for years after that. So he did get a multiple game suspension, and somebody can check me on this too. We're doing a lot of fact check Jason today because my memory is not perfect. But there was this thing about Clint Dempsey is suspended, or he's on he hadn't didn't finish his suspension in the Open Cup before he retired. So here in 2024, I think people even say stuff like, "Oh, Clint Dempsey is still suspended from the Open Cup." I don't think that's technically true. I think there's either he fulfilled it or something happened. But regardless, it's still funny to say. Like, it's still interesting to think that Clint Dempsey could still be suspended from the Open Cup. Like, if he decided to come out of retirement and play for one of these amateur teams, which occasionally happens, right? You'll see a former MLS or a former pro pop up in an amateur team somewhere and go, "Oh, okay. That guy wants one more." I mean, what was it this year? I mean, that was one of the good stories this year, right? Sasha Kleshtin going and playing for, what was the name of the team? Do you remember this, Robert?
Oh, was it county, something county in California? Was it
No, he was
Orange
playing.
County?
He played out in Orange County against Orange County because he was California based, and that was an easy home game for him to play in. But he was playing for a team in the middle of the country. I'm surprised the chat's just not coming at me with this right now and letting me know, because some of you definitely know what I'm talking about here. So let me see if
Des
I can
Moines
figure.
Menace.
There you go, Des Moines. I should have known.
One of USL2's powerhouses.
That's right. He played for the Des Moines Menace in the Open Cup and brought a couple of his friends with him at one point, from Major League Soccer, former MLS guys. So,
And another one like that, Justin Miram played for the Michigan Stars this year.
Okay, well, they a Michigan guy playing for the Michigan Stars.
And funny quirks of suspension, the owner of the Michigan Stars had to sit out a recent Open Cup from a red card he got in California in like 10 years ago. So another quirk of the competition is random long memories.
I've heard some things about the owner of the Michigan Stars, but I'm not going to say them because I don't want to get sued. So I'm just going to move on here. But yeah, that's an interesting one to bring up as well. Oh yeah, Roger Espinoza, second appearance on the show, played. Again, he had retired from Major League Soccer and Sporting Kansas City. He played in the round second round that Sasha Kleshtin played in. It looks like AJ De La Garza was also involved. So yeah, there you go.
So
that's fun.
With all that said, lots of good memories. Another one I want to shout out before we move on. One of my favorite Open Cup memories, because I had a great time watching it and the game was fantastic, was 2017 Chicago Fire at Nippert Stadium, FC Cincinnati. FC Cincinnati was on a great run in the USL at that point. They had obviously made it to the later stages of the competition. That stadium was absolutely rocking. That was some end-to-end stuff. I'm sure Cincinnati fans might even call that the Mitch Hildebrand game. He shut out the Fire when they're probably in their best moment in the last 10, 15 years, when they had Schweinsteiger, Nemanja Nikolic, and a lot of good players. And they were at the height of their powers at that time, held 0-0, and Cincinnati went on to win in penalties. That was edge of the seat stuff.
Was that a John Harkes led FC Cincinnati team? Was he still in charge at that point? I don't know. He had some moments. So. Johnny Harkes had some moments. Just want to mention him because why not? Why wouldn't you mention an American soccer legend? So there you go. Okay, good stuff.
I do remember Corbin Bone played for that Cincinnati team.
Corbin Bone. All right.
But the 2024 edition Open Cup final tonight at 10:30 Eastern, LAFC versus Sporting Kansas City, going for their fifth Thank you, chat, for all the entries. We will circle back around to those at the end of the show. But we're going to move on to this edition, or today's edition of Culture Wars. All right, Wednesday's Culture Wars. I'm Robert Kerr alongside Jason Davis. There was an interesting tweet following Inter Miami's trip up to NYCFC. There was a tifo with some name calling regarding plastic fans, and we want to ask the question: just how plastic is American soccer? Fans, clubs, all the above.
Let me read this out for anybody who's listening. It says, "If my club exists," this is Grace Roberts. Let me get the context. I should probably do that first, right? The context for this tweet. All right. So as you
I
mentioned,
guess that's my job. I'm the host. I should give the context. Grace Robertson threw that out there. There you go.
Okay. So, well, first of all, as you said, Inter Miami went up to New York and played at Yankee Stadium, and NYCFC had a tifo, and the tifo was Barbie themed, and basically said, "Don't be plastic," and this led Grace Robertson to say something, right, about the nature of NYCFC fandom. "If my club existed as a franchise spinoff of another club on the other side of the Atlantic for purposes of sports washing by an autocratic petrostate, I would probably act less smug about it." Now, this feels like one of those things that you kind of have to be very online in a football way to understand. Robert, this is, you have to parse every part of what Grace said, because it all relates to varying, like, obviously this is a reference to City Football Group, and NYCFC being part of the multi-club outfit that is City Football Group, and then City Football Group being backed by Emirati owners, hence the petrostate, and this is sports washing of the UAE and the politics and the environmental impacts of the petro money that they, or the petroleum products that they, like, all that stuff is baked into this, right? It's pretty complicated when you kind of try to figure it out.
We were talking about a soccer bubble earlier in the show, and definitely all these layers of context is definitely in the bubble stuff.
Yeah, it is. And I thought this was interesting as something to bring up, because what Grace is saying now, she is taking a shot at NYCFC fans in particular. Like, don't be so smug about calling Miami fans plastic because they jumped on board because of Lionel Messi, right? That's the implication here. You only jumped on board because Miami signed players like Messi and Busquets and Alba and Suarez. And she's saying, don't be smug because your team is an outpost of City Football Group. And there's lots of things that we could ask about this. The simplest way to say it is, how plastic is American soccer? Because clearly here you have Inter Miami fans who are being labeled plastic because they've jumped on the bandwagon with the world-famous superstar having joined the club last season. But you also have this notion of NYCFC fans being plastic because they're supporting a club that is only, in some people's minds, a minor league outfit that is subservient to the top of the ladder club back in England, in this case, Manchester City. And we've already mentioned this today, right? Because Friedkin's going to buy Everton. They also own Roma. We've got this situation where players are going between these sister clubs, or these clubs that are owned by the same entities. And it certainly robs a club of a sense of agency, right?
It's not standing on its own.
It doesn't feel that way. Right. And I think in the case of a Girona, which really didn't have a moment before the last couple years, so you could argue Girona doesn't get this unless City owns a portion of Girona and sends players to Girona who can help Girona make the Champions League out of La Liga. Right. That's something that Girona fans, can they look too closely at this? Can they look to a gift horse in the mouth, in a gift city in the mouth in this case? But there's still this notion of Girona having history, having been around for a long time. European roots are much deeper. And here in the United States, we have clubs that are 5, 10, 15 years old. Obviously, we have some that go back to the beginning of MLS, but that's not NYCFC. NYCFC, despite their plans, still does not have their own stadium. They still very much look like they are just a an outpost, a franchise, a minor league club of Manchester City. And so should NYCFC fans feel chagrined by that? Or should they not be fans at all? Should people refuse to become fans of these clubs because they don't fit our model in our head of what a club is supposed to be? But that model, of course, is a function of how European football has operated for the last 150 years, and we just don't have that history. We just don't know. We just don't have that past to build on.
NYCFC, the second MLS team in New York, and it's wild that the plastic one is second to the team sponsored by a energy drink manufacturer across town. So that kind of puts a little bit of context to it.
Yeah.
And in the city group strata, NYCFC would be like double A, single A in the,
Right.
the echelon if you're talking about it in a minor league parlance. I mean, because you said a standout player that isn't a legend that's coming to retire or to lead their final seasons or final kicks of the ball there. If they are advancing and becoming a player of value, they're gonna go away to Girona or one of the other city group owned teams. And so it's hard. I guess it's in my mind, it would be hard to root for that unless that team NYCFC was literally my neighborhood club and I lived in that neighborhood by Yankee Stadium and that was truly mine. It would be hard for me to throw a lot of energy, passion, and weight. It might be a nice day out for an odd game here or there, but to actually like throw your true passion and commit to your fandom, it would be very difficult for me.
I just don't like this. I don't like this policing that happens. And
True.
Grace Robertson is a soccer person I respect. I mean, followed on Twitter for a long time before I jumped out of Elon Musk's platform a while back. I don't really have an issue with the idea that maybe don't be. I mean, this is somebody judging the behavior of somebody judging the behavior of another set of fans. I mean, we get into
layered.
this weird layered meta situation. But I generally don't like the policing that we do of ourselves. I don't love that when, especially English football fans, mainly because we can communicate directly without a language barrier. I don't love it when they are laughing at American soccer. I mean, one of my seminal moments as an American soccer writer, journalist, podcaster, whatever, when I had a blog years and years ago, there was this story that an English writer for GQ UK had written about Philadelphia Union fans. And he had followed Union fans on a trip to Columbus. And the piece was rife with derision. It was just a hit piece about how plastic and ridiculous these Union fans were for basically cosplaying as English football fans. And I think maybe even the idea was they were cosplaying as hooligans, right? They were wearing Doc Martens. They were doing things that felt like they were just copycatting what they thought an English football fan was supposed to look like from Green Street Hooligans or whatever. And I understand that people can be ridiculous and there's definitely a line, and hey, maybe don't put on a fake accent when you're supporting your soccer team so you can. I mean, there's obviously like stuff that goes beyond the pale. But in general, I responded to this piece. Like I wrote my own response on my blog, which then GQ UK picked up and ran as a rebuttal on their website, because I was like, wait a second, how are we supposed to do this? Like, how is American soccer supposed to do this? We don't have the opportunity anymore, the way that the English did, that the Italians did, the South Americans did, to incubate our culture without constantly being bombarded by judgment and influence from other older soccer cultures, right? We just didn't have, because American soccer didn't really catch on here, because we're Americans and we're exceptionalist and we had baseball and football and other things that we cared about more. We didn't do that thing of building our own soccer culture. And then we kind of, when the world got smaller and everybody was able to look at everybody else directly, feel like, oh, well, we developed our culture and it's cool. We don't have to be like the English. We don't have to be like the Italians. We don't have to be like the Germans. We can be ourselves. No, we're constantly worried that we're not doing it right, because all of this has happened in the last 30 years when the world has gotten so much smaller, right? And everybody's constantly telling you you're doing it wrong. but we have to start from somewhere. And we can't not be subject to those influences. It's impossible for American soccer fans, whatever your background, not to be influenced by a soccer culture abroad. It is impossible. So how are we supposed to go with this? How are we supposed to do this? Are we saying that NYCFC fans shouldn't support their club because it's a minor league outpost? Are we saying that Miami fans shouldn't support Miami because Messi just showed up? And if you decided to like them now, that somehow feels fake. Are we going to say NYCFC fans, as we had in the chat, are wrong because they weren't supporting the Red Bulls before NYCFC showed up? I mean, to get too judgy about that is to miss the point that we're trying to grow this game. And we have to stop being so concerned about how we're doing it. And I do think we need to trust ourselves, which we don't know how to do.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, at the same time, the English like to deride, and they are a little bit, they'd rather take the negative slant, especially in the written word. The press over there is just absolutely, they will jump on anything, and any
Sure.
time that they have the opportunity to look down at Americans, they will take full advantage of that, and they will put some blinders on to their own shortcomings.
Sure.
And so, we're an easy target. And it's funny, it's also American sensibility. I don't think there's too many Americans gatekeeping how the Japanese do their baseball culture either.
No, we don't. But that's because we don't see them as a threat. That we don't see Japanese baseball as a threat to the predominance of Major League Baseball or to American dominance within the game. And to that point, we don't care who wins the World Baseball Classic. American baseball fans don't care who wins the World Baseball Classic because we don't see it as a referendum on American dominance in the sport. We just take that for granted. That's a baseline principle belief that Americans are the best at baseball. We invented the sport. We've got the best league. Of course, we're the best at baseball. Do we get weird about the Dominicans having more players per capita than we do? Yeah, sure, probably sometimes. But generally speaking, we just kind of assume we're good. We don't have to be worried about this because we're confident in our place in world baseball. That is not the case in soccer. And the English, 10 Americans now own Premier League teams with the freaking deal going through with Everton. There's more and more American influence on the English game and on world football in general every single day, and there's a resentment there. And I get that on some level. Like, I understand why you would be a little bit hackles raised if you're an English football fan, and suddenly everything happening is a little bit more American than it used to be. And as you said, they generally like to take shots at Americans, but that's this weird relationship which goes well beyond soccer that we have with English culture and English people and colonization and all that stuff, Robert. It's all mixed in. I just think it's interesting that we as American soccer fans and we want to be like Europe, but we don't want to allow the process to happen naturally. We cannot do anything but seem to want to grab onto somebody else's culture and copycat that culture. And anything that feels too American is very much the wrong thing to do, right? You can look at every American soccer club of note, and they'll do something that people think of as more American than European, and that's the thing that will get derided the most, that will get criticized the most. And it is frustrating if you're sort of an observer of all this stuff and you just want to see us fall in love with the game in a way that allows us to enjoy it rather than constantly checking our shoulder to see if we're doing it right.
The analogy that kind of comes to mind, English soccer kind of might be the seniors in high school. They've been there. They've been doing it a long time. They know the school songs. They know who all the best players are. And the American fan culture, kind of like the dorky freshmen coming in. They're getting their feet wet. They're not quite sure who they are yet. They are taking examples from their elders, maybe using some of them. But maybe we're a freshman that of mixed background. We are, we don't know if we're chasing the Hispanic roots. We don't know if we're trying to chase the European roots. Still trying to find the footing, but also in that as being the freshman, also maybe a little modesty with those years might come their own natural way of going through and navigating their school or their
Yeah.
soccer culture.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's fascinating. Fascinating sort of mix of all these things.
So that's your final note. You're like, well, I guess so.
Well, I mean, look, we're saying how plastic is American soccer, and if I have to make a clear statement about it, it's super plastic. But that's only because we haven't had time for it to harden into anything else, to change into anything else, right? And when we say plastic, obviously you can get into a debate about what that even means. Obviously, plastic in an English context simply means that you're not really a fan. You're a temporary fan. You're only doing it because you're chasing the glory of a winning team or because you're following a player. And again, those judgments of what is a good, correct fandom, almost always those things exclude people in a way that is bad for American soccer. And certainly they're just judgy in a way that robs people of their agency and robs people of their right to choose. I mean, I will say that I used to be one of these people when it came to American sports who would judge somebody if they said, "Oh yeah, I'm a Chicago Bulls fan." I'd be like, "Oh yeah, where are you from?" "I'm from Oklahoma. I'm from Texas. I'm from California." "Why are you a Chicago Bulls fan?" We all know why. People were Chicago Bulls fans who weren't from Chicago. And I'm like, that's not how fandom is supposed to work. You're not from there. You have no connection. But why not? Why not? Particularly if you come from a place, and this is very true of American soccer, if you come from a place that doesn't have a team or doesn't have a team that feels like it's big enough or interesting enough. And I do love that idea that we should be local supporters of what we've got in our backyard. Please support local soccer 100%. But I can't really judge somebody having grown up in an American American sports environment rather, where we've got the NFL on every Sunday in the fall with the impossibly big show and massive this and massive that, best athletes in the world, the NBA, Major League Baseball. I can't really blame somebody if they're like, well, I don't know if I want to go out with 2,000 other people and watch a bunch of guys run around and play on a plastic pitch. Speaking of plastic, like I can understand if those people prefer to express their fandom by watching something on television that is a little bit more down the line culturally and professionally.
I can't disagree. Can't disagree. Some humility at the top, and also acknowledgement of the grassroots that's going down in the lower leagues. I think is relevant as well, because I do think there's a lot of people on the ground in these small towns, the summer league teams, and then the USL and the NISA teams. I'm sure there's lots of passion and unique culture being built in those small towns across the United States.
Yeah.
We are drawing to the end of our hour here on Morning Kick Around. I guess just reminder, 10:30 Eastern Time, LAFC versus Sporting Kansas City in the Open Cup. Thank you all to contributing in the chat. We are going to do better to have a read and react section at the end of each show. Thank you to Mike, Terry, Harry, Mike, and others that were contributing, and some fact checking on Jason Davis, throwing out all those memories.
Live fact checking. Keep doing that. Keep up the good work.
Will Sporting Kansas City achieve their 5th Open Cup title, trying to tie Bethlehem Steel and Maccabi Los Angeles?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get a hold of us or check out any of our content, Kickaround on X and Instagram. We're going to try to expand onto other platforms as well. We understand that TikTok is probably the right place for us to be putting stuff as well. That goes against our dad nature, but I think maybe we'll try to put some stuff up on there. And then if you want to write in questions, comments, concerns, or partnership opportunities, morningkickaround@gmail.com. This is a Monday, Wednesday, Friday show, 9:30 Eastern Time live, and then clips being posted throughout the day. As a parting shot, Jason, who do you have to win the Open Cup tonight?
LAFC.
LAFC get their first Open Cup title?
Yes, I believe that will happen. First loss in a final for Sporting if they don't win tonight in Los Angeles. So I will take LAFC.
All right, we'll see. Thank you very much, and we will see you Friday. We've thoroughly kicked it around.